Shalom, friends. This is Daniel with Bless Israel Network. And given what's going on currently within Israel and the Gaza Strip and the immediate surrounding area, I thought it might be timely to bring you a message which may shed light on why this conflict between the Israelis and the Muslim Arabs just seems to go on and on and on, especially the ones in the Gaza Strip. But really, it's a larger conflict. It's not really limited and confined to the Gaza Strip. It is really a larger conflict that is more along the lines of Jews and Muslims. And so, to try and help maybe shed some light on why this conflict doesn't ever seem to go away. It just seems to simmer down for a while, and then, there's sporadic this and that, and then it explodes again. And it's exploded again now, and it's actually at a more ominous level than it's ever been before, which could be an indication that we are getting closer to when Yeshua is going to come back and bring peace to everyone. But I'm not here to say that because I'm not an expert. I would just like to share with you what I hope is some revealing information about Islam, which may help you understand why this conflict doesn't seem to go away. And frankly, I don't think it will until some cataclysmic, seismic type events take place. So, having said that, let me just dive in and share some information with you about Islam that you may or may not know. If you do, great. But if you don't, hopefully it'll open your eyes. And please feel free to share this message with others who may be hungry to understand why this keeps happening. So, first, let's just go over a couple of basic things. For example, how about defining what Islam is? Okay? All right, well, let me go through a couple of points here. Islam is a social, political, religious, economic model which is governed by something known as Sharia law. In Judaism, we have what we call halakha, which is Jewish law. In Islam, it's called Sharia law. That's the religious law that governs Islam. Now, one thing that's important to understand about Islam, I might sound a little redundant here, but bear with me. Islam is Islam. There is no moderate version of Islam. There are such people as moderate Muslims, but there is no moderate version of Islam. It's not entirely different than other major religions as well. For example, you could say the ultra-Orthodox Jews are the ones that are following all the tenets of the faith. So they are following halakhic or Jewish law when it comes to Judaism. And all the other Jews, a lesser version of it, but it's kind of like that in Islam, in that if you aren't following all the tenets of the faith, those who are view anyone who isn't as not quite up to par, not up to speed, and they kind of look down on them. And that's the case within many religions. Christianity, a lot of very zealot Pentecostal type Christians look down on other sort of nominal Christians that are not necessarily walking the full tenets of the faith. So, getting back to Islam, by definition, in Islam, any person, if you are born and raised an Arab Muslim or a Muslim in any country, if you are born and raised into a Muslim family, okay, if you are not following the strict tenets of the faith, you are literally considered an infidel by those who are the fundamentalists, if you will. And in Islam, anyone who isn't following the strict tenets of the faith is considered an infidel and should be killed. And a little known fact is more Muslims are killed at the hands of other Muslims than by any other group. And that's because a fundamentalist Muslim who is honoring all the tenets of the faith is commanded by Allah to kill any infidel, which includes other Muslims that are not obeying all the tenets of the faith. Now, that might sound a little bit harsh, but it is, in fact, what happens in Islam. There is no such thing as moderate Islam. I repeat, there are moderate Muslims, but Islam is Islam. Either you're fully integrated into it or you're considered an infidel. And it's very important to understand that from the get-go, because if you don't, then other things will not necessarily make sense. So using that as a foundation, then I can help explain other elements of it. But it's critical to understand that it is the fundamentalists, the ones who are sworn to Allah, who are driving what most people consider to be terrorism, killings, etc., etc. Anyone who isn't obeying every command given by Allah through his messenger, Muhammad, is considered an infidel. So that's the main point number one that we have to use as a launching pad in order to gain a better, deeper understanding of Islam. Now, in Christianity, for example, you have something known as free will. Do you have that in Islam? No. By definition, Islam is defined as submission. Everyone in Islam who is obeying the strict tenets of the faith needs to submit fully to Allah. There's no room for free will. There's no room for critical thinking or what have you. Either you are in full obedience or you're considered an infidel. Again, it may be kind of difficult to grasp that, but that is what the true fundamentalist Muslim does and believes. Their Messiah is not Jesus, is not Yeshua. Their Messiah is known as the Mahdi. And their goal is complete world domination. This is a fact. They do not agree with peaceful coexistence with any other group of people. They have a goal that their religion, their God, their way of life is what everyone else should adhere to. In fact, in Islam, if you compromise on any tenets of the faith, that is considered blasphemy. And in Islam, blasphemy is punishable by death. So the last thing you want to do is you want to disobey any of the tenets of the faith or sit down with your enemy, say for example with Israel, and negotiate some sort of a settlement which includes compromising on any one of the tenets of your faith. And one of the tenets of the faith of Islam is that any land that they had previously controlled belongs to them forever. So, on that basis, from their perspective, they believe all the land that Israel sits on belongs to them because centuries ago they used to control it. So therefore, no matter how Israel's borders are defined, the current ones, the so-called 67 ones, the 48 ones when modern Israel became a state, None of those borders are acceptable because every single square inch of land that the Jews are residing on, the Muslims, consider it to be their land. And so if a committed, dedicated Muslim negotiates some sort of agreement which gives the okay for the Jews to claim sovereignty over any land that the Muslims consider to be theirs, that Muslim who agreed to that has, by definition in Islamic law, committed blasphemy and needs to be killed. He needs to be executed. This may explain why Yasser Arafat never sat down and signed an agreement for a two-state solution, because that would give legitimacy to Israel's right to the land, including Jerusalem, including Temple Mount, and what have you. If you remember, back in the year 2000, he got together with then Prime Minister Ehud Barak under the auspices of President Bill Clinton, and they talked for weeks and weeks. And Ehud Barak made the most generous, compromising offer in the history of modern Israel. He was willing to give up 99% of what Arafat was demanding. I mean, he was going to cut a line across central Israel and link the Gaza Strip to Judea Samaria, aka the West Bank. He was going to divide Jerusalem. He was going to give them money. He was going to allow thousands of so-called refugees to come back into he was going to do almost everything. And President Clinton at the time, after the negotiations collapsed, he said he couldn't believe how generous the offer was from Ehud Barak. And he publicly blamed Yasser Arafat, to President Clinton's credit. He publicly blamed Arafat for the failure of those discussions. And at the end of the day, President Clinton, who was told by Arafat, "Mr. President, you're a great man," and President Clinton turned to Yasser Arafat and said, "No, I'm a failure, and you have made me one." Because Arafat refused to agree to a compromise. And what was the compromise? Israel would still be in existence as a Jewish state. Arafat was going to get virtually everything he demanded, but wasn't good enough, because there would be Jewish sovereignty over miles and miles and miles of what is now modern Israel. And that was unacceptable to Arafat. As a matter of fact, even though he didn't agree to it, just the fact that he was willing to enter into serious long-term discussions with President Clinton and Prime Minister Ehud Barak, there were Arab Muslims that were ready to string Arafat up. They were ready to kill him because he was willing to even sit and have discussions. They didn't want him to even have discussions with the Israeli Jewish leadership about a potential compromise. No, there's no compromise. It's our land. So this really is a foundational backdrop to what has contributed to what continues to go on and on and on. And it is in no small way a factor in what's happening right now today. So I wanted to just give you this very brief update, which I hope clarifies a few things for you. I will continue to provide some additional messages and get deeper into it, but this would basically be the first place to start to give you a little bit of info about why this conflict just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. In subsequent messages, I will get more deeper into Islam and explain things to you that you may not know. In fact, you may not only be surprised, you may be shocked to find out. But for now, I'll sign off, and thanks very much. And please drop us a note if you'd like. Get on our mailing list. Go to our website, blessisraelnetwork.com. And if you want to make a donation or what have you, please do. or invite us to come speak. We'd be happy to do that. So thanks and goodbye for now.